WebGrants software runs inside of a browser. Any of the major browsers like Internet Explorer, Chrome, Safari, Firefox will work with the system. Both the internal and the external users will arrive at the same screen, and from this screen they can log in using the system. They log in by entering a user ID and a password. The user ID and password can be typed in directly into the system, or we can integrate the WebGrants software with the customer's single sign-on tool. We can integrate with SAML, OAuth, and other integration mechanisms that would allow you to authenticate the user with your existing single sign-on tools. I'm going to log in first as the administrator and show you the internal functionality that is part of the system. So when we log in, the first thing that we see is the dashboard. And from the dashboard, you will see the various information that has been routed to you personally, or important deadlines and due dates that are coming up that you should be aware of. Before I describe the dashboard, I'm going to describe the overall screen layout. All of the various screens in the system follow the same basic layout. At the top of the screen here, there's this white bar, and in that bar there is a WebGrants logo. That logo will be removed and replaced with your own image or branding that will identify the software as your system. Below that, in this little black box, is the name of the individual who's currently logged in, the type of user that they are, and their security access roles. In this gray area, there's the name of the screen that we're currently on. We are currently on the work assignment screen, and that will show you the title that will change as you navigate through the system. There's also some secondary navigation here, and then you have a toolbar that has a back, print, help, and logout buttons. And then over here on the left-hand side, we have the main menu, and the main menu will give you access to all the various modules that make up the WebGrants system. There is the dashboard, which is where we are, and then there is the people and the organizations module, which is going to be your contacts management area. This is going to store both internal and external users, and also the organizations that they belong to. Internal grants is a module that is from the perspective of you as a grantee. It integrates with grants.gov and allows you to keep track of grants that you receive from the federal government, the state government, or someplace else. The awards module, this is going to be the financial management aspect of the system. This is going to allow you to record money that you receive from various external sources like the federal government, state government, local governments, or other benefactors that may be giving you money. The award will then be subdivided into multiple funding sources and can be used to fund the grants that you give away. The funding opportunities is where you would go to create new funding opportunities. These would be grant opportunity announcements that would be posted online and available for prospective applicants to view. And those applicants could then read the funding opportunities, and if they decide, they could create an application. They could fill out that application, and then they can submit that application to you. You will find those submitted applications in the Submitted Applications module. This is kind of a temporary holding place for applications where you can check the applications for quality. You can also route the applications back to the applicant for corrections. And when you feel that the application is of good quality, you can move it on to the next stage, which is the evaluations. In the View module, this is where you would assign applications to evaluators. And here you can assign the various applications to the evaluators, who will then log into the system, and they will read the applications, and they will enter in their scores and comments into online evaluation forms. The software will then create an average score for each application, and then you can do the ultimate award or reject of each application. Applications that are awarded will move into the next module, which is the grant tracking module. The grant tracking module is where all of the post-award management will take place. This is where you'll manage the budget. You can request periodic progress reports. You can process payments, conduct site visits, do contract amendments, and any other kind of monitoring or oversight until project closeout. The inventory module, this is asset management. This is if you have keeping track of large capital purchases or any other kind of assets that you may want to keep track of within the system. There's a built-in reporting tool that has both standard reports and ad hoc reports, and the reports can be exported to a wide variety of formats. And then finally, there is the utilities module where the system administrator can customize the software. Here, the system admin can create new forms, change workflows and business rules, create new security roles, modify drop-downs, modify alerts, many other capabilities that I will show at the end of the demo. Back on the dashboard is subdivided into sections. So here we have the first one, which is called Approaching Deadlines Next 30 Days. So this is going to show you any documents that you are named on that has a due date coming up within the next 30 days. So this could be applications, status reports, claims, site visits, pretty much any kind of document that has a deadline will appear here. Then you have Document Approval Inbox. This is going to be an inbox for documents that are routed to you for approval. The WebGrants software supports multiple levels of approval, and when the document gets to your level, then it will appear on your dashboard. You can then either approve the document and move it on to the next level, or you can negotiate it back to the previous level. Next, we have recent negotiations. Negotiation is a concept in the system that means that you route the document back to the previous user in the workflow. So, for example, you could route an application back to an applicant or a status report back to a grantee. And the documents will appear here for 30 days to remind you of those negotiations. If you are a site visitor and you've been assigned sites to visit, then those sites will appear here on your dashboard in your My Site Visits inbox. When you visit the site, you would click on the forms, and you would complete those forms and submit them to complete your site visit. The new user list, if you are in charge of the new user approval process for newly registered users, then the newly registered users will appear here, and you will then click on each one and either approve or not approve that person to become a user of the WebGrants system. And then finally, you have quick reports. These are going to be your favorite reports. It is possible to create many ad hoc reports within the system, and you can designate certain reports as your favorites, and then those will appear on your dashboard. The next module is the calendar. The calendar will show you the exact same information as what was on the dashboard, but it will show it to you in a calendar format. Like a Google Calendar or an Outlook calendar, it will display the information as upcoming events on your calendar. Next, you have alerts. The WebGrants software sends out many different automated email alerts based upon a wide variety of business rules, and each one of these alerts will arrive in your personal email account, but a copy will be retained inside the system forever. And so you can go back and you can search your alert history, and you can see all the various alerts that you have received from the system. Next, we'll go into the people database. The people database is going to be your contacts database. It's going to store all the people that are registered users within the system. And so this will include both internal and external people. And this list can grow quite large. It can grow into the hundreds, thousands, or even more. So there's a navigational aid here to help you locate people. There's an alphabet, and you can click on the letter of the alphabet, and only those people whose last names begin with that letter will appear. You can also do an advanced search, and you can search across a wide variety of fields to locate a particular person. You can also type in the individual's name, either first or last, and you can locate them that way. Here we can click on a particular person, and we can see their profile. We can edit this profile, and this form that you see here, this represents the fields that are available from the WebGrants system out of the box. So these are the standard default fields that you get for a person's profile. This form can be customized by the system administrator, meaning that they can add fields, delete fields, modify fields, change the instructions, label, data type, and they can do all that through a tool called the Form Creator, which I will show you toward the end of the demo. So what's available here, there's an active flag, there's a type, you can have various different types of people. You can have the name, the title, email, address, phone, and any other relevant information that you may want to keep track of at the person level. You can also customize the individual's dashboard. You can also associate them with an agency. So you can have a multi-agency implementation, meaning that you can have more than one department using the same instance of the WebGrants software. But not everybody needs to have access to all agencies' information. So here you can compartmentalize the data and associate the individual with only a single agency. And what this means is that when they log into the system, they will see data only pertaining to that agency. They will not see any data for any other agencies. There's a related concept called program areas, and program areas are individual grant types. And you can assign access rights by type. So you can grant an individual access to a single grant type or multiple grant types within an agency. So even though they have access to the agency, they may not have access to every single grant type within that agency. Next, we have roles. Roles are created by the system administrator, and they're based upon privileges. And there's approximately 130 privileges within the system. And these privileges do things like grant access to modules, forms, fields, buttons, and the ability to add data, delete data, approve. So you can really segment and break down the capabilities into minute details and then assign those access rights to individual users. People can also subscribe to automated email alerts. So the WebGrants software sends out automated email alerts across a wide variety of business rules, and you can subscribe or not subscribe to each individual alert, depending upon what kind of alerts each person would like to receive from within the system. If we go back to the person information, there's also an alert history. You can look at the alert history for each individual. There's also a document history. Here you can look at a past history or a relationship that you have with this particular person. So here you can see the applications that they've submitted in the past, the evaluations on those app applications, and the grants that they were awarded in the past. You can also merge records together if you identify a duplicate. So you can have a duplicate registration or a duplicate name, and then you can merge those records together. That will eliminate the duplicate, and all historical data will merge as well. Below the person's profile are the organizations that they belong to. A single person can belong to one or many. You can also maintain electronic files at the organization or at the person level, as well as inventory items. The organization's database, it has a similar interface where you can also, by individual name, you can also click on the letter of the alphabet, and only those organizations that begin with that letter will appear. You can also do an advanced search as well. Here we can click on a particular organization, and we can edit the organization profile, and these are the standard fields that come out of the box for the organization. Here, once again, the administrator can customize the software. They can add fields, modify fields, delete fields, just like they can with the person profile. So here we have an active flag, we have an organization type, a name, tax ID, DUNS, website address, and other relevant fields that you may want to keep track of at the org level. You can also look at the alert history, the document history for the organization. You can merge duplicates. And then below the organization profile are the people that are connected to the organization. You can also maintain attached files at the org level and inventory items as well. Next, we will go into the award module. This is going to be the financial management of the system. This is where you can maintain money that you have received from external sources. So when you receive money from the federal government, state government, or someplace else, you would create an award. And you can add as many awards as you would like to the system. Each award will have a profile, which will consist of many different fields. You have a status, which can be active, inactive, closed. You have a number, a name, the primary program area, additional program areas that it may also be funding, the beginning balance, the current amount. The award type is where the money came from, either the federal, state, local, or someplace else. The benefactor would be the organization that gave you the money. This would be where the money originated from. Then you have the award year, the CFDA number, appropriation date, start date, end date, and the program officer who's in charge of the award. And then once you have the award profile created, you can then subdivide the money into one or more fund sources. So if we click on a particular fund source, the fund source can be used for various different purposes. You can use it to fund grants, a revolving account, loans, or internal admin. And so if you're going to give the money away, that would be a grant. A revolving account would be some kind of internal fund. Loans would be not grants, but loans to the grantee. And the admin would be internal administration. The coding block here relates the money in the WebGrants software with the money in your financial accounting system. So in your financial accounting system, under a series of account codes, program codes, fund codes, and other type codes, this dollar amount is also defined. And that synchronizes the data between the two systems. If we go back to the list, the WebGrants software will keep track of the uncommitted, committed, expended, and unexpended amounts. The uncommitted would be the amount of money that's been allocated to the fund source, but not yet allocated to any projects. The committed amount is the amount of money that's been allocated or earmarked for one or more projects. The expended amount is the amount of money that's been paid to the grantee, and the unexpended amount is the difference between the committed and the expended amounts. And then in this final grants column, we can click this grants link, and here we can drill down and we can see the projects that are being funded from this particular fund source. So here you have the grant title, the organization, the funding opportunity, the awarded amount, the committed, the expended, and the unexpended amounts. And these dollar amounts that you see here, these are not typed in by staff. These are roll-up numbers based upon activity further down in the grant management process. So each one of these projects has a budget, and against that budget, grantees will submit reimbursement requests, which will be paid, and as they are paid, these numbers will automatically adjust. This is a real-time financial dashboard that will show you real-time how much money is available, spent, unspent, and you can see that very easily in the awards module. Next is the funding opportunities. The funding opportunities is where you would go to create a new funding announcement for prospective applicants to apply for grants. And so here you could add any number of new funding opportunities at any point in time. Each funding opportunity will look like this. It will have a title, it will have a due date, some high-level information, a description, attached files, website links, and any question and answers that have been posted to the funding opportunity. Now, to create this funding opportunity, you would edit the funding opportunity, and the funding opportunity is going to be subdivided into components. And this is kind of the standard interface for completing documents within the WebGrants system. So here we'll click on the general information. The general information will contain high-level information about the funding opportunity. The funding opportunity will contain a status, which can be editing, posted, suspended, test, closed, archived, deleted. You have the title of the funding opportunity, the program area that you're posting this funding opportunity for, the program officer who's going to be in charge of the funding opportunity. The program officer's name, email address, and telephone number will appear at the top of the funding opportunity for the benefit of the applicant. You can offer a one-stage or a two-stage application process. A two-stage application process will include a pre-application, which is sometimes called an eligibility quiz or a letter of intent. The pre-application will then be filled out by the applicant and submitted. Internal staff will evaluate the pre-application. If the pre-application is approved, then the applicant can submit the final application. If the pre-application is not approved, then the applicant cannot submit the final application. The default here is no, so there will be no pre-application. There will only be a final application offered. You can set the application deadline date and time, and the software will automatically shut down when that date and time is reached. You can also indicate the project start and project end dates, and also the award announcement date. You can also create business rules. Business rules not only affect the application process, but they also affect further downstream grant management processes as well. Here you can indicate the minimum and the maximum dollar amount that the applicant can request in their budget. The budget of their application could be a complicated multi-line item budget, but the total of that must fall within these parameters. You can also say not applicable, and then there will be no limit. You can allow the applicant to ask questions or not allow them. You can allow them or not allow them to copy or reuse old applications. You can allow them to use inventory items. You can specify whether or not you want to use the review process, the number of rounds, the name of the round, and the security of those rounds. And you can also affect further downstream processes like the number of approval levels for further documents, status report rules, and others. You can also describe the funding opportunity. Describing the funding opportunity will allow you to describe it in a rich text box. This rich text box allows you to format the data, the text nicely. You can change styles and fonts and sizes, and you can nicely format the data for the prospective user. You can also insert tables, images, multimedia files, so you can make it a very rich text for that particular reader. You can also attach electronic files to the funding opportunity. These can be Word documents, PDFs, Excel spreadsheets, multimedia files can be attached and downloaded by the applicant. You can also indicate websites. These can be federal sites, state sites, or other sites that may be relevant for the funding opportunity. And then once you have your funding opportunity created, you can then post that funding opportunity online, and then the applicants will be able to view the funding opportunity and read it, and then they will be able to create an application and then submit that application. You would find those applications in the Submitted Applications module. The Submitted Applications module, the first thing that we see here is a list of the current funding opportunities. So we see the title, the program area, the due date, and the number of applications in the various statuses. So how many are still editing, how many have been submitted, correcting, and so on. So here we can click on the funding opportunity, and then we can drill down and we can see the applications that have been submitted. Here we can see the status, the submitted date, the title, the organization, the applicant, and other information. Here we can click on the application, and we can see the application as it was submitted by the applicant. Now, this application is a demonstration application. Each customer's various applications for their various program areas will be configured into the system using the Form Creator tool. And using that tool, the forms can be maintained over time, questions can be changed, instructions can be changed, and the client themselves can maintain their own forms and their own system after the software has gone into production. There's a number of functions that you can perform here. One of those is you can look at the attached files in isolation. Sometimes it's difficult to see the attached files all together, and so here is a dedicated screen just to see those files. There's an alert history, which shows you correspondence or communication that happened back and forth between yourself and the applicant. And then you can map the application. This uses Google Maps by default. You can map a single application or multiple applications on a single map. Both addresses and coordinates are supported. And we can also integrate with other GIS tools beyond Google Maps as well. If you find that the application has a problem, it's incomplete or incorrect in some way, then you can negotiate the application. Negotiating the application allows you to unlock one or more sections of the application and route the application back to the applicant for corrections. You don't necessarily have to unlock the entire application. You can just unlock sections at a time. So for example, we could unlock the project information, we could unlock the budget, and we could say resubmit this application by some particular deadline date. You can also type in a message indicating what the problem is with the application and what you want the applicant to correct. You can also upload an electronic file as well. When you click Save, the software will send an automated email alert to the applicant telling them that their application has been unlocked. The applicant will then go into the system, they will revise their project information and their budget, and they will then resubmit the application. Now, when they resubmit the application, internal staff can go to the versions link, and from the versions link, they can see a complete history of all the versions that were created for this particular application. So here you can click on a particular version and you can see the high-level information, the version information, and the contents of that version at that time. So through this negotiation process, no data is lost. The original submission is retained, plus each subsequent version is retained as well. So there's no limit to the number of versions that can be created. You can also withdraw the application for whatever reason, and you can type in some notes, and you can eliminate the application from the process. You can also type in notes. You can enter in some notes here. Your name, the date, and the notes will stay with the application as it gets routed through the workflow. These are internal notes. The applicant will not be able to see these notes. You can, however, provide feedback. Entering feedback will be visible by the applicant. So anything that you type in here will be shared with the applicant. And then once you're satisfied that the application is of good quality, you can then release it for review. And that will move it on to the next stage, which is the review process. Static panels allows you to create a group of people who typically review applications. This static panel module is optional. It is not necessary to create these panels, but you can create them and use them if you would like. So if you have the same people review applications over and over again, it may be a good idea just to place them on a static panel, and then you can assign them in bulk as opposed to assigning each individual person. You can add as many static panels as you would like. Each static panel can have any number of people on it, and you could add additional people or remove people at any point in time to modify each one of your static panels. The panels module is where you would do the actual assignment. So this is where you would actually assign the evaluators to each application. The first thing that you see here is a list of the current funding opportunities. You see the title, the program, the due date, the number of applications under review, awarded, not awarded, and so on. And so here we can click on the funding opportunity. And then once again, we drill down and we can see the applications. The WebGrants software supports up to 5 rounds of review. And so customers can use these 5 rounds in various different ways. Some customers use all 5. Some customers only use 1 or 2. It just depends upon the needs of the customer. You can use these rounds various different ways. Like, for example, round 1 could be an internal panel. Round 2 could be an external panel. Round 3 could be a management or board of directors level panel. However, you need to use the rounds. You can also hide and show application sections by round. So, for example, you could show the budget in round 1, hide the budget in round 2, and so on. You can also look at the applications by round, so we can see what's in round 1, what's in round 2, or all the rounds together. And here you can select the applications. You could select one or you could select many. And then you would click the Reviewer Assignments button. This will show you the applications that you have selected. And you can assign a reviewer. And you do that by clicking this Locate Person button. And then a new window will pop up that will display the people database. And here will be a list of the various people that have the privilege to review applications. And so from this list, you can select the individual. The name will appear in the box. You can also indicate a due date or a deadline for when you would like the evaluations to be completed. This will tie into the alerts, so they will receive automated email reminders as the deadline approaches. You can also indicate that they're internal, external, or primary or secondary on the review. And then you can save the reviewer, and they will be assigned to the applications that you have selected. Alternatively, you could say Assign Panel. And here, instead of assigning a single person, you would assign an entire panel. So, for example, if you selected the Domestic Projects panel and there were 5 people predefined on the Domestic Projects panel, then all 5 of them would be assigned to the applications that you have selected. And so that is kind of a fast way to assign evaluators to applications. Now, once you have assigned all of your evaluators to all of your applications, you can then click the Notify for Review button. and that will send an automated email alert to all the evaluators that have been assigned that they can now log into the system and evaluate the applications that they have been assigned. So those evaluators would go to their dashboard, and from their dashboard, they would click on My Reviews. And here, they would see an inbox of the applications that have been assigned to them personally. Here, they would click on a particular application, and they would be able to see the application's contents. They would be able to read the application here in this center column, and then over here on the right-hand side, they would see the evaluation forms. So you could have one evaluation form or many, just depending upon the business rules and the nature of the grant program. So here you would click on a particular form, and then you would see the questions that have been predefined on the evaluation form. Now, these evaluation forms are created and maintained by the system administrator. So just like the application is created and maintained by the admin, so too are the evaluation forms. The evaluation forms can have various different types of fields. They can have yes/no type questions, numeric input questions, drop-down list boxes, and also comments. And many of these can have a score. Like, for example, yes could be worth 1 point, no could be worth 0 points, so you could have a point value for yes/no answers. Numeric input questions will have a number range. In this particular case, it's 1 to 10, but it could be anything, 1 to 5, 1 to 100, however it is defined by the admin. And so here you would enter in a number to indicate the score. You could also have a drop-down list box, and each option could have a point value as well. For example, excellent could be 10, good could be 8, fair could be 5, and so on. And so you can also assign a weight. So one question could be worth more or less than another question. You can also have comments. Comments don't have scores, but they're important feedback from the evaluator. And so here the evaluators would enter in their scores and their comments, and then they would submit their evaluations. And then internal staff would go back to the review module, and they would click on Final Approval. And Final Approval is the module where you would do the ultimate award or reject of each application. So once again, you see a list of the current funding opportunities, and here you would click on a particular funding opportunity, and you would drill down into the applications again. So here you would see the status, the title, the organization, submitted date, budget, and then each round score. So here you would see the round 1 score, 2, 3, and so on. These scores that you see here, these are average scores based on a mathematical formula that the software calculates. And so there is an average score created for each application based upon the numeric values that the evaluators entered into their review forms. You can click this score, and you can drill down, and you can see the evaluators that have submitted their evaluations and those that have not. And so for those evaluators that have submitted their forms, you can click into the form, and you can drill down to the raw data and to each individual score and comment that they entered into their evaluation forms. So you can drill down and you can see how they arrived at their average score and what comments they made and what individual scores they made. You can see all that through the system. Back on the list of applications, in this right-handmost column, there is this reviews link where you can click this link and you can drill down and you can see all the evaluators and all their forms for that one particular application. Back on the list of applications, we can edit this list, and this will allow us to edit certain fields on this list. So here you can type in some short notes that you may want to make for each application. You can also indicate an internal status. The system administrator controls the contents of this drop-down list box. So this could be any kind of temporary status that the application would need to be placed into. For example, it could be tentatively approved, approved with conditions, awaiting board approval, awaiting director's signature, or some other kind of temporary step in the workflow. The final score, the idea here is that evaluators will review the applications independently, but then they may have a meeting, and in that meeting, they may decide that they want to change their scores. You can handle that one of two ways. You can route the review back to the reviewer, where they can edit their scores and resubmit the review. Alternatively, you can type in a final score, which is an overall consensus score for that application, and use that as the basis for award. Over here on the left-hand side, we have the ultimate status of the application. It is currently in under review status, but we can change it to approved, awarded, or not awarded. Awarded would mean funded, and not awarded would mean rejected. So if we change the status to awarded and we click Save, then the software will create a grant. Next, we will go into the grant tracking module. The grant tracking module is where all of the post-award management will take place. The first screen that we see here is a search screen, and we can search under a wide variety of fields. We can search by number, status, title, program, funding opportunity, names, project number, fund source year, and other fields. So here we can do a search, and we get back a list of grants that match those fields. Here we see the grant number, the status, the title, the organization, grantee, and other information. And here we can click on the individual grant. Now, the individual grant itself is going to be subdivided into components. And the number of components and the nature of those components depends upon the grant program. Some grant programs are complicated and they require many components. Other grant programs are simpler and they require fewer components. At the top of the screen here, there's two columns. There's a source and a security. The source column will indicate where the component originated from. The little orange gear will denote that it is a system component. This means that this is a component that comes standard with the WebGrants software. It's something that's built in and can be used in a grant program. The little green arrow indicates that the component originated in the application and was copied from the application into the grant when the application was awarded. And there are certain kind of standard components that customers typically copy from the application into the grant, like the scope of work, budget, objective, and others. Then we also have user-defined forms. User-defined forms are forms that are created by the system administrator to fulfill some data capture requirements for the grant program, either compliance or monitoring or some kind of data capture needs for that particular grant program. The security of the forms are primarily from the perspective of the external user. The options here are grantor edit only, which means that the external user can see the form, but they cannot edit it. Grantor only means that the external user cannot see that form at all. And grantee edit, which means that the external user can both see it and edit it. Okay, so we'll go through these components. The first component is the general information of the grant. And most of this information will be copied automatically from the application into the grant when the application is awarded. Here you have the grant number, the grant title, the grant status, which can be awarded, underway, suspended, closed, archived, canceled. You have the award year, the program area, the grantee organization, the grantee primary contact, additional grantee contacts, the primary internal contact, and additional internal contacts. And these people here will be the ones that will receive all the automated email alerts pertaining to this grant. So when the software sends out an alert because status reports are due or a claim has been paid or a site visit is pending, these people will be the ones that will receive those alerts. You can also indicate the contract sent, received, executed, and legal dates, the project start date, project end date, and also comments. The next component is called the scope of work, and this is an example of a component that originated in the application and was copied into the grant when the application was awarded. Now, once it is in the grant, you can create a new version. And you can create any number of versions. You can look at a version history. If the scope of work were to change during the course of the project, you can version the scope of work and create a new version. And you can have an unlimited number of versions for each component within the system. You can also negotiate the form. Negotiating the form means that you unlock the form and allow the grantee to modify it. This temporarily unlocks it. The grantee can then update the data in the component and then submit it to you. Internal staff will then need to approve that that version is correct. Then that will become the official version of that scope of work. The budget also will copy automatically from the application into the grant. You have the same capabilities of negotiating and versioning the budget as well. The fund sources, so if you recall at the beginning of the demo, I showed you the award module where we subdivided the award into one or more fund sources. Here's where you would connect those fund sources to the grant to fund the project. Initially, there will be no fund sources connected to the grant, so you would click the Add button, and this will show you a list of applicable fund sources. Applicable meaning that these are the funds that could potentially be assignable to this particular grant. And so here you would select one or many. There's no limit to the number of fund sources that could fund a single grant project. So then you would save that, and then those fund sources would then be associated or connected to this particular project. Then you would edit those fund sources and you would enter in a committed amount. So this is the amount of money that you are reserving or earmarking to fund this particular project. This particular grant was awarded for $65,000. So you have to allocate or earmark $65,000 to this project in some manner. Either that could be from a single fund source or it could be from a combination of multiple fund sources. You can also indicate a priority order. The priority order will indicate the order in which you want to draw down the funds. You could draw down old money first, or new money first, or federal money first, or state money first. Depending upon your business rules, you can establish a priority order, and then the software will follow those business rules. Once you have those business rules set, the software will indicate the originally committed and the currently committed. Any modifications to the fund source amount, the committed amount, will be captured in the transfer log. The transfer log is part of the larger audit log system that captures all user actions throughout the entire system. But here, this specifically pertains to the committed amount, and the transfer log will capture the year, the award number, the name, the coding block, the change date, the user, their comments, and the changed amount. So anytime you increase or decrease funding, the software will automatically capture that in the transfer log. Next, we have contracts. Contracts are created based upon contract templates. Contract templates are created by the system administrator in the utilities module. Once the contract templates have been defined, they can be used in a specific grant. And contract templates are standard legal documents with boilerplate paragraphs, terms, and conditions and clauses. But inside this document, there will be variable placeholders that will resolve, kind of like Microsoft Mail Merge with Microsoft Word. They will pull in the data from the grant that pertains to that field. So you can pull in contact information, organization information, budget information, scope of work, fund sources, and various other grant information can be pulled into the contract to create a fully formed contract. And once the fully formed contract has been created, then that can be routed for signatures. You can route this through a multi-level signature process that includes both internal and external users. Each individual person would then go in at their level and they would sign the document, they would type in their name, they would enter in their date and their comments, and then it would go to the next level for signature. And through this process, you could sign the contract through an electronic signature process and execute it within the WebGrants software. It is also possible to export the contract to PDF, where you could have an external signature process outside of the system. Objectives is another example of a component that originated in the application and was copied from the application into the grant. Once these objectives are in the grant, they can then further be copied onto the status report. So if the applicant said, okay, I'm going to do A, B, and C on their application, then A, B, and C can automatically appear on their status report. And there is no need for anybody to retype that information, verify that it's correct, check it for accuracy or completeness. All of that data will just flow automatically from the application to the status report. And then once that data is on the status report, you can have additional columns that indicate the percentage complete. You can attach files, you can have backup documentation, and all of that data will just flow automatically from the application to the grant to the status report. Next, we have encumbrances. Encumbrances are things that can hold up a project. These can be tasks, milestones, objectives, deliverables that must be accomplished by a certain deadline date, and there's a due date. And if the grantee does not submit or complete that task by that deadline date, there can be consequences that the software can enforce. And those consequences can be things like the grantee can no longer apply for new funding opportunities, or the grantee can no longer submit reimbursement requests. And so you can have real consequences inside the system. This is optional. This is not necessarily must be enforced, but you can have real consequences for missed deadlines within the system. Next, we have status reports. Status reports are going to be scheduled, and they're going to be scheduled according to a business rule. And that will start on a particular starting month, a particular starting day. The status report can have various subtypes. So you can have interim reports, quarterly reports, monthly reports, final reports, annual reports, and these reports can all have different forms. So a quarterly report could look very different from a final report. You can also establish a frequency for when those reports are due. They can be due weekly, monthly, quarterly, yearly, or some other level. And then you can also specify the number of reports that ultimately must be submitted before the end of the project. Once the status report schedule has been created, the software will send automated email reminders to the grantee, letting them know that their status reports are due. The grantee will then submit their status reports, and their status reports will be submitted inside the system. And internal staff have the same capabilities with the status reports as they do with the application. They can negotiate the status report, withdraw it, copy it. They can also send it through a multi-level approval process. You can designate any number of staff at each level. When the status report is submitted, everybody in level 1 is notified. When somebody in level 1 approves the status report, level 2 is notified. When somebody in level 2 approves the status report, level 3 is notified. And this goes up to the highest defined level, and then once the highest defined level approves the status report status goes to approved, which is the terminating status for that document. Next, we have claims. There are two types of claims. There are payments and there are reimbursements. Payments are lump sum, installments, or advances. So if you do a lump sum payment or installments, which is like, for example, you pay the grantee $1,000 a month for the next 12 months, or advances, where you give the grantee a certain upfront amount, and then the rest is done through a reimbursement. So the software can handle advanced or lump sum payments. And then the other type is reimbursements. Reimbursements are created and submitted by the grantee. The software will automatically create a reimbursement component, and that reimbursement component will reproduce the budget. So it will take the current version of the budget, and it will reproduce the budget line items and the budget amounts here in the reimbursement component. The grantee will then indicate their expenses this period. So on a per budget line item basis, they will enter in each expense that they have occurred in this period. The prior expenses is a total of all the previously paid claims. The total is the expenses this period plus the prior expenses, and the available balance is the contract budget minus the total. These last three columns are created automatically by the system so that the grantee does not have to do any math. At the top of the screen, the internal staff have the same capabilities as they do with the other documents. They can negotiate them, withdraw, copy. You can route the claim through a multi-level approval process, and then ultimately you can create the voucher. The voucher is going to be the payment authorization form that allows you to pay or reimburse the grantee. This can be part of a batch of type reimbursement. The account code and the vendor IDs can either be typed in by staff or they can come in automatically from the organization profile. The invoice posting date can be now or in the future. The date paid and the check number can be typed in by staff or it can come in automatically via integration with your financial accounting system. Below that, we have a recap of the allocated fund sources. This is just a static recap of the fund sources that have been associated with this particular grant. The reimbursement distribution allows you to manually distribute the money across the various fund sources. So in this particular case, the grantee, they purchased a radio for $8,958. So this $8,958 can be reimbursed from one fund source, or it can be reimbursed in a more complicated way across multiple fund sources. And when this information gets into your financial accounting system, the financial accounting system knows how to draw down the money because of this coding block mapping that maps to particular buckets of money in the financial accounting system. So that is how you can reimburse the grantee for their claims. The next component is going to be a communication component, which is subdivided into two sections. There is a non-system communication log, which allows you to record important conversations that happened outside of the system. So if there was a phone call, email, note, fax, or letter, you can record who it was from, to, the subject, the message, and you can also upload various electronic files to record with that message. The other section is called an inter-system grantee correspondence, and that allows you to communicate back and forth between yourself and the grantee. So here you can send a message to the grantee, and then they can respond, and you can respond, and you can have a back and forth dialogue between yourself and the grantee. The benefit of this is that this communication will be connected to the grant, and anybody that has access to the grant can view the correspondence as opposed to it being private in your own personal email account. Next, we have site visits. Site visits are created by the system administrator, and they create site visit forms. And those site visit forms are assigned to the site visitor, who will then go and visit the site, and they will enter in their various findings into the site visit forms. Site visits can have three stages. Stage one can be a site visit that is assigned to the grantee themselves. This can be to prepare them for the site visit. You could have a checklist that you could send to the grantee to indicate what documents they should prepare prior to the site visit. The second stage could be the site visit itself. That would be the forms that are assigned to the site visitor. That would be private forms that they would only fill out on their own. And then the third stage would be corrections or remediations that could be assigned once again to the grantee that would allow them to prove that they made the necessary corrections and improvements for any findings that were found on the site visit. And then this can start over again. And these can be in-person site visits, they can be desk site visits or phone calls. Various different types can be defined within the system. Next, we have contract amendments. Contract amendments can be created either by internal staff or external staff, and they can be for various reasons. They could be for budget modification, duration extension, scope of work changes, and once these are completed, they can be routed through a multi-level approval process, and then once it gets to the top of the approval, then you can modify the corresponding contracts or forms that correspond to the amendment. Inventory, this allows you to connect inventory items to the grant if you are using the inventory module. So if any inventory items are connected to the grant, then those inventory items can appear in the various sub-documents. So they can appear on your status report, claim, site visit, and contract amendment. Loans, the WebGrants software allows for loan processing in addition to grant management. So here we can edit the loan information, and we can enter in the loan amount, the interest rate, the term in months, and the first payment due date. Based on this information, the software will create an amortization table and a loan payback schedule. And so here you can see the status of the loan, the principal, the interest, and the loan payback dates. You can record whether the payment was paid, the due date, the date paid, the check number, and the amount can be recorded for the loan payback. This information will also create automated email alerts to the grantee, letting them know that their loan payback is due at a particular time. You can also have a closeout process. A closeout process can be for internal staff or for the grantee. The anticipated completion date will tie into the alerts, and automated email alerts will be sent to both internal staff and the grantee when the due date approaches. And these can be for various closeout reasons or tasks that must be performed prior to the closing of the project. And then finally, we have project outcomes. Project outcomes can record whether the project was completed on task, on schedule, on budget, the overall evaluations, project accomplishments of the project, and various things like that that you can record for future reference to see if should you award more money to this grantee in the future. Okay, so that is the grant tracking process. I'm going to now go into the reports. The report module that comes standard with the WebGrants software has various different report types. There are formatted reports. Formatted reports are those reports that come standard with the WebGrants software. So these are standard reports that come out of the box that are available inside the WebGrants system. So here you have reports that are based on a wide variety of documents within the system, like people, organizations, awards, applications, reviews, grants, and so on. So here, if we click on a particular report type, you can filter the data that you see on your report, and you can filter it by various different filter criteria that is relevant to the report type that you're looking at. Here, you can filter it by program area, by funding opportunity, by status, and so on. You can also sort the data, and you can also export this information to HTML, PDF, Excel, or Word. So here, if we generate the report, this is kind of the standard look and feel for the reports that are generated from the WebGrants software. In addition to standard reports, there's also ad hoc reports. Ad hoc reports are reports that are created by the customer themselves. So here the customer can go in and they can add any number of ad hoc reports to the system. Ad hoc reports also have filter screens where you can filter by high-level information, and you can also export the reports to the same formats. But you can also define the report. Defining the report allows you to select the fields that you would like to see on your report. And you can select these fields from anywhere throughout the entire system. And you would do that by clicking this Add Fields button. And this will take you through a little wizard. And so here you can add fields from anywhere throughout the entire system, from people, organizations, awards, applications, reviews, grants, status reports, and any other aspect of the system. So here we could click the applications, and we could see a list of the forms that make up the application. We can click on the budget, for example, and here we can see the budget sections and the individual fields that appear on that budget. So we could add the classification, we could add the months utilized, we could add the total, and we could say, add these fields to my report. And then now those fields will appear on the report. And then you could edit this field list, and you could change the order of the fields, the label of those fields. You can group the data and aggregate the data. You can sort the data, either ascending or descending. You can filter the data, either equal to, less than, greater than, not equal to, like, or between, some kind of value. And so this could be restricting it by area code, zip code, district, county, city. And you could also subtotal and grand total the data as well. You can also create mathematical formulas. These mathematical formulas can support add, subtract, multiply, divide by any of the fields on your report. Now, you can also export this data to Microsoft Excel, and then you can further manipulate the data there as well. Finally, we are going to go into the utilities module. The utilities module is where the system administrator can customize the system. And so there's many different areas where the system administrator can do that. One is in the agencies. So the software can always be expanded to include more departments that the customer may have. So we may implement the software for a single agency, but then over time, other agencies could come on board and they can customize the software for their grant programs and workflows and business rules along with other agencies within the system. Alerts management, all the various automated email alerts that are sent out by the system can be configured by the system administrator. So here you can enter in the alert name, you can make it active or inactive, the frequency. In this particular case, this is a due date approaching alert. So here you can specify that you want the alert sent out 3 days, 7 days, and 14 days prior to the deadline, but this can be anything. You can add any number of days here prior to the due date, and the software will send out the alert that many days before the due date. You can indicate the subject and the body of the alert, and the body of the alert can have substitutions. These are going to be variables that will resolve and be replaced with the actual data. So here in the alert, it says, Dear Grantee Name. This will be replaced with Dear Bob Smith. The following application is due in 5 days for number 123, title, blah, blah, blah. And so here this will be resolved, and it will indicate more useful information to the recipient when they receive this alert. Next, we have drop-down list boxes. All the various drop-down list boxes that you saw in this demo are customizable by the system administrator. You can also add your own drop-down list boxes to the system. Each drop-down list box will have options, and you can change the order, the code, the label, the value, restrict it by program, and also archive old options that are no longer being used. The form creator is the tool that allows the system administrator to configure new forms, new fields, or maintain existing forms and existing fields within the system. Here you can modify the person profile, the organization profile, the award, and the fund sources. And then on a per program area basis, you can customize the funding opportunity, application, review, grant, status report, claim, and so on. So here we can click on into a list of forms, and here we can see the form list, which is a repository of forms that have been created for this particular program area and form type combination. Here you can add new forms and edit your existing forms. So here we can click on a particular form, and we can drill down and we can see the sections that make up that form. Here we could add a new form section at any point in time. We could add new fields to our form at any point in time. So if we were to add a new field, we could add a new field, or we could edit an existing field and modify it using this particular form. So this allows you to change the field order. It allows you to show or hide the field. It allows you to enter in the field label, the database field name, the data type. These can be various types of fields like text boxes, numbers, drop-downs, percentages, web links, so many different data types. You can make the field required or optional. You can specify the physical size of the field, the maximum length in terms of characters or words. You can have the field security, the field view. You can disable the field. You can have a placeholder, a default value, an input mask. You can define an input mask if you want the data entered in a particular format, like a telephone number or a zip code. An output mask would be if the data is encrypted and you did not want to show the entire data plain text. Maybe you only want to show the last 4 characters of the data, and so you would define an output mask. You can spell check the field. You can do calculations. You can do add, subtract, multiply, and divide between any of the fields on any of the forms. And this allows you to perform all the mathematical functions for the benefit of the user, so they never have to do any math and make any kind of mathematical errors in the form. Conditional logic, you can do conditional show, which allows you to incorporate branching logic into the forms. So for example, if the user answers a question in a particular way, a whole bunch of questions now appear on the form that weren't there before. Otherwise, those fields would not appear. Conditional required means that if you answer a question in a particular way, a whole bunch of questions are required. If you don't answer it that way, they remain optional. Conditional validation allows you to specify business rules like one field has to be greater than, not equal to, or less than another field. Conditional reject means that you can put in thresholds that if a value is too high or too low, you can automatically disallow the user from submitting that document. You can display the field on its own line or on the same line as the prior field. You can hide the field on preview. You can insert a section header label. You can do field instructions above the field, to the left of the field, to the right of the field, and below the field. You can also do tooltips upon hover, and also online help text as well. And so in this way, new forms and new fields can be created by the system administrator, or existing forms, existing fields can be maintained as well. The last thing that I actually want to show is the user roles. This is where the system administrator can create new user roles. And so here you could add any number of roles to the system. Each role will be made up of a series of privileges. And so you can grant or not grant each individual privilege to that role. And there are many different privileges. So here, for example, if you wanted to grant access to the people module, you would grant that access. If you wanted them to be able to add, edit, or delete a person, you would grant that access. If you wanted them to be able to modify their roles and program areas, you would grant that access, and so on through the list of privileges. And then once you had the role created, you would then assign that role to one or more individual users. Okay, that is the end of my demonstration. Thank you.